Okay, guys, let's talk about some playoff matchups I really want to see. Now, if I don't mention a team, that does not mean I'm not interested in watching them. I'm going to watch every playoff game, of course. And also, I did take the standings into account here, series that are more likely to happen, that sort of thing. Anyway, let's go to the 4-5 matchup in the West, the Pelicans and the Clippers. And I believe, while they have the same record, the Pelicans are technically the 4 seed now, unless Google is lying to me. Now, Ingram did have the recent knee injury, and they say he's probably going to be back like around the start of the playoffs. So we'll see with him, and obviously him healthy makes this even better. But this series is really exciting to me for a lot of reasons. I mean, for one, just how the Clippers would try to guard Zion. Like in their last game where Zion went nuts, he was going at Zubac and Plumlee and PJ Tucker a lot of the time. Kawhi was on him for some possessions, and I think that would be like a big question for the Clippers where it's like, yeah, Kawhi can handle defensive possessions on Zion, no doubt. But what's the balance there for the Clippers given what Kawhi has to do for you on the other end, The other fun thing there is just everything involving Herb Jones, who I think is a lock for all defense first team this year. And, I mean, the Pelicans can ask him to do basically anything between being an on-ball guy, a help guy, but between Kawhi, PG, Harden, and then on top of, like, the way that the Pelicans bring extra attention, which leads to them giving up more three-point attempts than your average team, and just how the Clippers would deal with that, where for a large chunk of the season they were doing great at, like, oh, you're bringing extra attention, let's make the swing pass, and make sure the thing's moving well. But then, like you saw, like in the Laker game where the Lakers brought 2 to Harden a bunch of times, and it kind of killed their offense in that fourth quarter as LeBron went crazy on the other end. And sure, I mean, their last loss to the Pacers was more so the defense than the offense, and they beat the Blazers back-to-back. But then you had, like, the game against Philly where they weren't as great on offense. And I remember in that Atlanta game, they were, like, putting 2 to the ball on Harden sometimes. And just, like, even if Harden's going to get his assists, it just feels like the Clippers' offense just can still kind of just not be in the same flow they were in earlier in the year. I don't know, the Clippers, they definitely have some stuff to prove on top of just, like, their transition defense. And we can see if the Clippers can, like, recapture that 25-5 run or whatever it was. And I just think against the Pelicans, it'd be quite a way to see if they can do it. And obviously the potential shot making of Kawhi, PG, the playmaking of Harden, like we get when the Clippers went on that run. I mean, their last game, you got a player like Larry Nance brings it up court off of a rebound, and then he kicks it to Zion. It's just like, yeah, if you're going to have that happen to you like 4 or 5 times a game in a playoff matchup against the Clippers or against the Pelicans, you're in for a tough time. Also, shout out to Trey Murphy and CJ. Okay, the next one is going to be, well, it's kind of me cheating. Basically, the Thunder and the T-Wolves are the 2-3 right now. Denver's 1 game up on them, so, okay, this could end up shifting a little bit. But just that in relation to what's going on at the 6th seed / 7 and 8 seed. So we got the Kings, Mavs, and Suns, and just the potential matchups that could happen there, right? Like, you could get Mavs, Wolves round 1, or the Suns and the Wolves, Kings, Wolves. You get what I'm saying? Like, the point is like, Luka versus the best defense in the NBA. Like, yeah, sign me up for that in round 1. Oh, obviously the Cat injury plays a role with the Wolves, of course. Shout out to Nas Reed. I mean, the Wolves have still been winning without Cat. Or hell, I mean, KD, Book, and Beal and their lineup numbers when those 3 on the court together versus the Thunder or the Wolves could be something. I mean, the Wolves, they, by design, give up a lot of mid-range jump shots. The Suns, as we know, shoot a lot of mid-range jump shots. There is a chance that the Suns would end up taking so many pull-up 2s in that matchup that the math might just be like, you have to shoot 60% on these shots to just hold up. And so what that looks like between Ant or Jaden or Alexander Walker trailing KD, Book, or Beal on these screens with Gobert waiting for him on the, around the screen and everything. So yeah, then you think about with OKC, who they do it differently, right? With them, I mean, they've got Chet in the middle, but I say this every single time with OKC, they bring extra help. They're willing to give up corner threes and all that stuff. And the pressure that they could put on like somebody like Phoenix or somebody like Dallas. When I say pressure, I mean more so like Luka's a genius. Like, he'll make all the plays, all the skip passes, and Kyrie can make all the tough shots. And just what that looks like versus OKC, who can put Lou Dort on Luka and who can have SGA in the passing lanes, and you get what I'm saying. Then you think about Sacramento and all this as well. Listen, I know Sabonis has to prove some things after Looney and Draymond pretty much clamped him up in that round 1 matchup, but he's been really good. But like, Keon Ellis has kind of transformed the Kings, man. I mean, he averages 4 points a game, but what he does defensively, I know there was the clip where he was looking for the screen against Brunson, he got by him, all that, I know. But in general, Keon Ellis's defense has just like really changed the Kings. And so thinking about him on just the top guys in the Thunder and the Wolves, so that seems cool. Next up, we are going to go with the 2 teams I've mentioned a bit here, the T-Wolves and the Thunder. So no disrespect to everybody else I just talked about, but if that was going to happen, it would have to happen in round 2, assuming that they end up 2-3 seeds. But if it does happen, I mean, Wolves Thunder has so much to it, man. Of course, once again, Karl Anthony Towns injury for the Wolves, but off rip, it's the potential of having Gobert help off of Josh Giddey. And so whether it's Isaiah Joe or Aaron Wiggins, Hayward, Kenrich Williams in his spot. That might depend on the matchup, whatever. Unless Giddey could just make him pay for giving him the space. So there's that. But then you just think about the size difference between the two teams and the way that they can go at each other's strengths and weaknesses, right? If that made sense, to where, the Wolves, when they've been fully healthy, have still at times had an offense problem, a turnover problem. To be clear, their starting five's offensive rating is still pretty damn good. But, crunch time, sometimes they've had some blown leads. I remember one against the Bulls where the Bulls just up to the pressure like crazy on them, and it led to some turnovers and stuff. And OKC is great at forcing turnovers. They're great at getting deflections and blocks and the whole thing. And so then you're looking at Ant's playmaking. And listen, obviously Ant can pull off some of the craziest things between, the dunk on John Collins, my goodness. So that matters. I'm pretty sure J-Dub has had possessions guarding Cat when they've met this season. Now, I do want to talk about the Chet-Gobert matchup a little bit. And again, they've used Rudy as a help guy off of Giddey this season, so there's that caveat. But safe to say, we would see a good amount of Gobert and Chet just guarding each other, right? And so for one, that's just how often can Chet score over Rudy around the rim? How often can he drive at him and, get a layup around him or whatever? But also just Chet's three-point shooting, right? Where Rudy can close out. Rudy can play defense outside of the paint very well. It's more so just you would prefer that he's able to patrol the paint the entire time. And so, I don't know, just want to see how the Wolves would deal with that between somebody else has to rotate over, or again, Rudy can do it. It's just, if he does it, then somebody else is going to have to help in the paint. And so I'm just picturing Chet SGA pick and pops, or just Chet spacing the floor out as J-Dub or SGA drive. And then just, how much help does Rudy provide? A lot, you would imagine. And then just how they deal with that around it. Anyway, that's fun stuff. And then as far as seeing Ant's playmaking in a playoff series, hey, listen, man, you want to go through his last few games, his assist turnover stuff's really good. But of course, OKC, help defense, corner threes, you know what I'm going to say. Also, just seeing J-Dub in the playoffs, I might do some sort of X Factor for playoff teams, each conference video or something. If I do, I think J-Dub will probably be in that video. Yeah, there's also the idea of would the Wolves put a wing on Chet and make him more switchable on his actions? There's so much to a Thunder-Wolves matchup. So yeah, I think that's about what I've got for the West. Of course, Denver's my pick to win the conference, as they are for most people. So, yeah. Anyway, now we're going to go to the East. We're not done yet. I'm going to start with the 4-5 matchup, most likely to happen in the East between the Magic and the Knicks. I understand that this series would be for the sickos more so than for the general, mass public. Everybody watching this video, of course, would want this series. I just want to see two really good defensive teams who lean pretty hard on their best players on offense. Brunson for one, Paolo for the other. You knew that. And just kind of have a slugfest. Now, I know the Knicks would be favored to win, but hey, man, Orlando lately, especially when Suggs and Jonathan Isaac are on the court together, they're just kind of terrifying on defense. And I think the defensive matchups kind of make themselves, where most likely it would be Suggs on Brunson, and then it would be OG on Paolo. When these guys played a little bit ago, OG was on Paolo, but Brunson was not playing in that game. And then when they played a few months ago before the OG trade, you had kind of a mix of Anthony Black and Suggs on Brunson. I would guess it's more Suggs in a playoff matchup. And then we get to have another rendition of, assuming he's healthy, which of course we want everybody healthy, of Julius Randle in the playoffs. And what does that look like if he's taking all of his contested jumpers? And yeah, it just feels like a fun series. And also getting to see Paolo and Franz in their first playoff matchup that has real stakes. They're the 5th seed. This is not a case of young team who just squeaked into the playoffs facing the top seed, So there's that. I've said this before. I do want at some point to see a Bucks-Sixers playoff matchup. It's kind of wild that it has somehow still not happened. But the only way for that to happen would be if Philly wins the play-in tournament. Because at this point, they've just nosedived so much without Embiid. There's a chance they could get the 6th seed over the Pacers, but they got to leapfrog Miami. The point being is the best chance of it happening is Embiid is healthy, and then it's Sixers-Bucks round 1. There you go. And if Embiid's 100%, then that series becomes extremely interesting. And if he's not, or if he's not able to get out there, then, well, what could have been, Of course, here's your obligatory as a Celtics fan. I'm always scared of Miami. There you go. They're the 7th seed right now. Now we can talk about Celtics-Bucks for the other matchup that, while it's not a guarantee, the Bucks lineup numbers with their main guys is still really good. And we could talk about the chemistry of Dame Giannis pick and rolls and the whole thing. The Dame Brook pick and rolls probably had more success this season. Anyway, look, I do have a million questions about a Celtics-Bucks matchup that I've kind of already talked about a bit. Yes, let me acknowledge the Celtics just had an all-time collapse versus Atlanta. Okay. But look, you've got can Brook just patrol the paint and not have to worry about Porzingis? Well, it's kind of tough because there's nobody in the Celtics starting five that you can just put your center on who's not going to be able to shoot. Teams have tried a little bit with Drew, like the Nuggets have had success with that. I mentioned that every single time I bring up the Nuggets and the Celtics, but even then they would just do it for little spurts here and there, you know what I mean? And so how could the Bucks deal with that? But also the other way around. I mean, if Brook is torching the Celtics from three, like how can they allow Porzingis to not have to worry about him as much out there? There's, Dame guarded by Drew or Derek White, and, Drew and Dame, that one playoff matchup a while ago now. But with that said, I mean, the Celtics have had Drew guard Giannis for times this season as well, and so they'd probably feel fine with doing that and then having Derek White on Dame. But then you think about, like, what if Giannis is really killing them? And so then Mazzulla is like, well, crap, we probably need Horford for more minutes because he has done an admirable job on Giannis when he's had to guard him in playoff matchups, right? Well, the thing there, though, is, the Celtics starting five, how great it's been all season, and would you feel the pressure of having to take out one of the guards for the sake of Horford? Like, that doesn't feel great, but maybe specifically for Giannis, it would make sense. And then, of course, just Tatum and Jalen doing Tatum and Jalen things. I mean, no, it's a series that I really, really hope we get, and if we get Dame at peak powers, I mean, that does freak me out a bit as a Celtics fan. I understand the records, I understand the Celtics are many games above, and yes, they should make the finals, no doubt about it. But, yeah. And then finally, I mean, we could say Celtics Nuggets. I mean, we all think it's, if you force us to make a pick, you force me to make a pick at least, like, yeah, that's going to be my finals pick, as I think it is for most people. The playoffs, they should be a good time. And also, I know that Pacers-Cavs is the 3-6 matchup in the East right now. But given Mitchell's injury, on top of Halliburton, he's been recovering from the hamstring. And, I mean, he was popping off against the Clippers in the last one, so maybe he's turned the corner. But that series is in a sort of, it could be really sick, but also some of the magic that Cleveland had throughout that run where, Garland and Mobley were out, that has dwindled a little bit, and I guess that kind of takes the sails out of it a bit. And the Pacers, I mean, Halliburton's he's been recovering from the hamstring, and he was cooking against the Clippers in their last one, so maybe he's turning the corner. I don't know. That one's in the, it could be really fun, but give me like 2 more weeks to decide category, I guess. Oh, and also just at the very end, like, yeah, we were probably going to get a Lakers, I mean, we're definitely getting a Lakers play-in game unless they like really collapse in the last like week and a half here. And so whether they're facing the Warriors or the Rockets, I don't know. That'll be a fun play-in game.